as of now, so I am recording. So as people jump in, we can go. But what I want to talk about is let's just do some troubleshooting. Let's see, you guys Saturday afternoon, your Sunday morning or Sunday night, Saturday night, whatever time of day it is, let's figure out what's going on. Let's get the simulator running. Let me just start it up here, and I just loaded up some uh, what I would say. I loaded up a gold chart, so we're going to work on some gold, and uh, we can do that, and we can figure out what's going on. Yeah, my mic is going to glitch in and out, but I think we're okay. It's just sort of, I think, the internet when it lags a bit, but we'll be okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this simulator. We started February 4th, so we're going to go a bit. Let's do some simulator work. So let's just update this a bit. I'm going to let it run to get some data, and then okay, March. All right. Okay, so that's some good information. Obviously, we've got that information there. We got our hourly chart, which I have it mapped out. Got our 15-minute chart, I have it mapped out. We got a 5-minute chart to look at some things, and then we got a minute chart to look at some stuff. So really what I want to talk about today is I just want to talk about, keeping things simple, keeping things very straightforward, not overcomplicating things. You'll see my charts right now are very, very clean. Maybe I'll do this one a little bigger. But what I want to talk about is just, let's go through some simple things. Let's talk about analysis. Let's go through, what we feel are pain points, and let's talk about some specifics. So what I'll do is, let me go first, and I'll start talking about some things that I notice, and maybe I'm going to go through my day in terms of how I trade a New York session. Like I said, I just opened it up to February 3rd. You guys can pick any date you want if you feel that I've gone through the charts already for the last 3 hours and been like, oh, I can do this at this time. Like, I haven't. So if there's a specific date you guys want us to start at, right now we're at like March 13th. If you want to start at March 20th, April 1st, we can do that. I don't really care. I probably will make mistakes. I probably will have bad trades like I normally do. I will probably have good trades. But the idea here is what I want to do is I want you to look at sort of the methodology, or sort of the method that I do my trading and my analysis, and you're going to see just sort of my thought process live, just to give you an idea of what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking what I'm thinking, and what I do on a day-to-day basis to make judgment calls, to figure out why XYZ is happening, things of that nature. So what I really want to do is I want to stress some simplistic things that I use. Like I said, I never trade complicated. I never learned to trade complicated. For me, this was always looking at patterns, looking at things that it made sense. Did it make sense? Why this happened? I would always ask why. A lot of people are caught up on visual cues, on various ways to do certain things. For me, I was always just looking at the charts going, okay, why did this happen, and how can I make this, how can I correct my errors? How can I get better? But more importantly, it's, like going forward, what do I need to look out for and where I need to be? So, as an example, I'm looking right now at a gold chart. So we're here, it looks like we're around like March 13th. When is March 13th actually? Give me a second here. So March 13th was like a Monday. Okay, so here's a Monday. Okay, so that's actually pretty good. So we'll do Monday. So we'll look at our Monday here, and so the first thing that I'm looking at right now, like I said, I just opened up the charts from February and I let it run a bit. So you see we have some January 26th to like February or March 13th data. This is Monday. Monday's almost coming to a close, I assume. What I'm looking at first is I'm looking at things that, to me, are potential ideas, potential hints for me at this point. You can clearly see at this point, if we look very closely, and then not very closely, but we look and we have like an upwards trend, and now it looks like we're starting to push a bit downward. Okay, so these are the first things that we're looking at. I'm not going to get into if what happens in terms of news events, things of that nature. It's going to be more of like, okay, what we see is what we get. I don't think that we're going to get too deep into those things as well. And like I said, I don't want to get into the weeds with like all those other items. I mean, if there is a big erratic movement, we can talk about that and we can say, hey, what happened? We'll look at that. But I mean, at this point, I'm going in blind. But I mean, once again, what we're always going to look at first off is we're always going to look at, specifically, is there news? What's happened? Things of that nature. So the assumptions here are very straightforward. So right now we just started the March 13th, or sorry, we're on actually the 15th. Okay, so we're on the 15th. So we're now into, what did I say? 13th was Monday, 15th Wednesday. So we're actually starting Wednesday. So we're 6 hours in. So what I'm looking for is not doing that. I'm doing Tuesday, 15th, sorry. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move us ever so slightly in this, and we're going to move on the 4 hour just so that it's easier for me to keep track of stuff. Okay, so we're here 14th, now we're on the 15th, so that would be the Tuesday. Okay, that's really weird. What did mine say? Okay, well, whatever, it is what it is. So we're gonna move through Tuesday. So this is your Asian session, okay? So if you were looking through Asian session, you're going through Asian session, and we're looking through, okay, great, Asian session's moving, and we're 2 hours into Asian session. Okay, I'm going to speed this up a bit. Okay. All right, so here we are. We're at, let's go back. There we go. So let's go back here. Going to jump into the 1 hour. So here we go. So here's the 1 hour charts just before the North American session opens. Okay, so let me just erase all drawings. And let's take a look very closely at what we have in terms of our market structure right now. Okay, so here we are. This is 6 a.m. my time, so 6 a.m. Eastern on a Tuesday. And what I'm looking at essentially is how am I going to attack the market today? So once again, when I trade, I'm trading basically between 7 and 10 a.m. pretty much, or 8 and 10. So basically, I'm looking at 1400, so 1400 GMT to like I would say 1800 GMT. Okay, so these are the hours I'm looking at. But as a trader, I'm going to come in a little bit sooner because I want to know what's happening in the markets. So I would have already had my charts marked up in this case because I would have had them from another day. So we're going to do everything very fresh here. I would be checking the news, what news events are happening, what's relevant. So what I'll do first is we're going to jump into the 4 hour time frame, so you can see here, and then we have our daily. Okay, so looking first, some very simplistic high level. I mean, we don't have a lot of data on the daily, so I do apologize. But what do I want to do is I want to find a resistance level. Okay, so at this point, my resistance level I'm going to put at the top, and my support level I almost want it to be in this area over here. Okay, so what I've done is I've identified what I consider a support and resistance level on the daily. I'm happy with that because what it does is it gives me a roadmap, and this is where people are always like, well, is my support level right? Is my resistance level right? and I say, what does it do to help you? Right away, this was just me looking at the chart saying, okay, does this make sense to me? Yeah, we have multiple touches for support. We have a few top touches for resistance. And then, we look right away, you can see we have like a little bit of a zone here where we had a tap and rejection. So, at a simplistic level, this makes sense to me. All right. You mean support and resistance from the book Naked Charts? Well, yeah, I mean, this is support and resistance in terms of whatever you describe support and resistance. Multiple touches on one side, multiple touches on the other side. You can run it from the wicks, you can run it from the bodies. I run it from the bodies because I just like to, have that little bit of extra space in terms of, if I make an error, there's a little bit, it's a little bit easier for me to pick that up. Okay, so this is what I've done on my daily. So right away, what I can see on my daily is we had I think what it considered a resistance level. We pulled back, we dropped all the way down, and it seems like we touched another level here, and now we're starting to move. I don't have a lot of confirmation. My initial instinct is saying that we're going to go further up just because we tapped and we pulled all the way back. So that's what I'm looking at, that we potentially could have going up. The argument could be made that we are going to fill this daily wick here, or we're going to head towards this wick over here. So this is where now, once again, we don't know what's going to happen. We can only make a judgment call. So when I have this information in here, I can turn around and see what's happening. Okay, UJ still on a downtrend because right now it looks like strong resistance. Okay, but guys, here's the thing. I'm talking about what we're doing right now on March 15th. I'm not talking about anything for next week or any of that stuff. You guys have to pay attention. This is probably the biggest stress point of anyone trying to learn Forex. You guys just don't pay attention to details. And this is a perfect example. I'm providing you a simulator. I'm showing you what's happening back in March, and someone's asking me about something that's happening next week. We're talking about gold. I'm showing you just simplistically how I go through my day. So can we get through that portion first, and then I will answer all the other questions. It's mind-boggling that people struggle, and then they wonder why they struggle, and it's like because we get questions that aren't even related to what I'm talking about. Like no one once asked me right now is like, okay, what are we doing next? It's, well, UJ. I'm not even on UJ. I'm on gold. Like you can clearly see on my screen. It's gold. Like we just said, I'm gonna go through my entire New York session trading plan and how I trade New York session. Like that's what we're doing here. All right, so we're good. Everyone's happy. We're going through the New York session on this specific day. It's now 6 a.m. I just woke up. I looked at myself in the mirror. I said, I'm a great person. I'm going to have a great day. Everyone should look at me and say, oh my gosh, he woke up at 6 a.m. and he's ready to go. So we're good, and everybody's happy. When you wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror and say, I'm the greatest person in the world. That's what you should be doing every single fucking morning. Wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to kill the market. If you don't believe in yourself, how are you going to be a successful trader? You know what? You turn around and you look at yourself and you do whatever you need to do. However you need to psych yourself up. Maybe you need to go to the gym. Maybe need to figure out what's going on. But here we are. We're at 6 a.m. This is 13 GMT according to my brokerage. 6 a.m. just before the New York session is going to get underway. We've gone through a little bit of the London session, and this is what I'm going to do. You're going to turn around and say, okay, what am I doing now? So I've got a daily. I drew out support and resistance to give me a little bit of a framework, right? So our framework here, pretty straightforward. I'm just trying to do things here. I'm at like 1224 to 1271. So we've got a big range here. Okay, so this 1224, 1271, we got about a $50 range in gold. That's really wide. I know I'm not going to see that move happen throughout today in terms of gold, but what I'm trying to say to myself is, okay, how are we going to attack this market today? What am I looking for? So daily, I'm looking, it looks like we may be pushing up. Who knows? Let's jump into our smaller charts. We're going to start now with the 4-hour. Okay, so we look at the 4-hour here. Let's take a quick look. 4-hour, once again, I'm looking at simplistically drawing maybe a resistance level. All right, so here we go. A little bit different than the daily because now I'm getting a little bit more detail, right? So I'm looking here at the daily and I'm trying to get myself a range. And what I mean, once again, by range is I'm trying to get myself a level that is realistic for a certain point, and then also from a resistance level, and then also from a support level. So simplistically, this is what I've done on my 4-hour range, okay? So we can see we have multiple taps. Some have crossed right over a little bit, some are in between the bodies, but for the most part, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for multiple taps, but I'm defining a range. And once again, my range is this area here, okay? So this is my range from 1228 to 1247. So I can work within this area and say to myself, I need 10 pips, okay? So that's what I'm going for today. I need 10 pips. And right away, I'm looking, so 10 pips, 100, mini pips, whatever you want to talk about, that is what I'm going for today. So we have basically what I would say almost a $20 range or 200 pips. So we wanted 10, or you want to go realistically 2,000. Okay, so look, we want 100 out of 2,000. Is it possible? We don't know yet, but right away I start to salivate because I'm like, ooh, there's all this space right here that I can take, because I'm looking at the candles and I'm just looking at a very high list, simplistic level. I haven't done anything yet. I haven't plotted any trades. I haven't figured anything out. But what I'm looking at closely is I'm looking at specific points in in terms of what we see overall. There's a question here, what's the average range of gold daily? I would say about $10. Anywhere between, you would see it move between $3 and $4 up to $10 a move. That's what I mean, like a whole move. It may go all the way up, like it may range $10, but then retract down to like a total value of like 5. But for the most part, it may go up and down almost to about 10. I've noticed that just in just trading it over the past like year. But what I'm now starting to zoom in for is because once again, we're at 6 a.m. I'm starting now to map out what I'm looking at. So let me just switch this here, for example. And if I zoom in a bit, I'm starting to see that, we had a bit of a pullback, but the last couple of days have been bullish. I notice over here, as an example right away, very simplistically, we have a price level here because why? Price tapped, rejected, and went the other way. So when I look left, this looks to me that we tapped this price level, okay? Simplistically, when I look further left, oh shit, there's more. When I look further left again, oh shit, there's more. So right away, this area here to me is of significance because what I'm looking at right now is I'm saying that is a price level that has happened many times. So with that being said, probability dictates that we may go back to that price level. So right away in my head, I'm like, hey, it might be a good day for a buy, right? I mean, if you look at it logically and you look through what we've done here, we've got some hints. Market touched here, market touched here, market touched here, market's touching over here. We had that. More importantly, when we look at this and Ted's saying, oh, okay, what's his magic voodoo? Market touches, retraces. Market touches, pulls back. We haven't come down here in a while. We haven't come down here in a while, right? Because this is February, and now we're in March. So at a high level, once again, I'm doing probability because once we just opened this. Do I think we're going over here, or do I think I'm going over here? I think more than likely we're going over here, right? We looked at our overall trend with the daily. Now we're looking at the 4-hour. We're getting hints. We're getting subtle hints just by drawing your resistance and support lines. You're giving yourself some subtle hints of what's starting to make sense. And this is how you plan. This is how the most successful traders out of the groups are planning. They're plotting out where they want to be. So now we've plotted this out and we've taken a look. So we're like, okay, this is good, but I want a little bit more information. Let's jump into the 15-minute window. Okay, 15-minute window. So let's zoom this in a bit. What are we looking at? Okay, so we pop down, jumping back into our 4-hour. We can see we had our range at, we had our range at 1247 to 1228. Let's remember that. Let's jump back into our 15 and look at 1227 to 1248. So 1248 was right over here, and 1227 was right over here. So right away now, we can start to see something that's happening, okay? So we start to see in the smaller time frames, we have a conflict, right? Jump into the 1 hour, and we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go 1248, up around over there, and we're gonna do 1227. All right. So what do we have here? We have a little bit of more confluence. It looks like based on the 15-minute, we had a little bit of a drop for consolidation, then starting to pull up. Jumping into the 5-minute, we can go even a little bit closer, see exactly what's happening here. We can see we did have that drop into our 1228 region. We're talking about 1228 around over here. Oh, even further. And we have our 1248 region, which is off our screen. So you can start to see how things are starting to make sense as we start to go through the market here. You can start to see it almost looks like we've hit like rock bottom, and now we're starting to move in the opposite direction. So now what we'll do is we'll open the simulator, and we will move a little bit in the 5-minute charts, and we will see how the 5-minute moves. So we're at 6 a.m. right now. And let me take away this, put this in, and so 13.5, 13.10, 13.15, 20, 25, 35, 40, 45, 50. Okay, so we're coming close to 7 a.m. All right, so let's jump back into our hour. All right, so now we're getting some information. So you can start to see we have some information. So remember, jumping back to the daily, what did we say? We were either going to fill this wick or we were going to fill that wick. So now I've got even more confluence. So I've been up now for about an hour. I made my initial thought processes, but now I'm starting to see, hey, we're going to start to move down, because you can start to see the daily is now forming in a bullish pattern, and we're starting to have that momentum into this level over here. We can see we're at a support level at 1224 on the daily, but now when I start to jump in our smaller time frames, you can start to see how now our smaller time frames, this was actually a consolidation region for a further push down. So this region over here has now created a consolidation, potentially breaking through and more than likely filling this wick over here. And you can see how much space now, if you turn around and you look at your 4-hour, you can see now you have space, and when people say you want a wick fill, now you can start to see we have about a 600 pip drop at this point. We're going from 1231 to 1225. That's a potential wick fill. So we've narrowed down our ranges. We've now turned around, and now we're starting to hunt left, but we have a little bit more direction. And what are we looking at now? Looking left, we're looking at this level here, these levels here, and potentially this level all the way down here. But for today's exercise, these are probably going to be our levels for right now in this day. Okay, so we've gotten information in the last hour. We've gotten a lot more information, but we've just used support and resistance to sort of figure out where we're going. There's a question here: is there a rejection zone in the 1236 area? 1236. Yeah, that could potentially be a rejection. What I tend to look at that more so, this area over here, is more consolidation, because all the candles and the wicks are around the same area, and then we should have, similar to over here, we had a little bit of consolidation and then a drop. We should have consolidation here and then potentially a drop further, probably into this price region here. But let's take a look and see what happens. So, okay, so we're at 1355. I'm looking at the charts. Let me just get rid of this again. I keep jumping back and forth. I'm looking at my charts. I'm looking at my 15. My 15 15-minute looks really good. Reason why it looks good, so I'm going to explain, so don't jump at me when you say, oh, why does it look good, is because we've tapped fresh price levels. And if we look over here, what do we got? We have a wick to be filled, but we tapped a fresh price level. So potentially we're going to see a little bit of a move and then further down for this price. Now, when you start to execute your trades, you're at 1231, you now have to make a determination of where you want to be. So when I turn around and I start to look at my trades, if I enter in a trade at this point and I look and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to enter a specific trade at this point, I'm going to say, okay, where do I want to be? You can then do a pending order where you want to be. I'll start it so that it allows me to take a trade, but let me just do this. So let's do exactly this, and what I'm going to do is I'm looking at this and I'm taking a sell position probably just before 7 o'clock. So if we jump on the 5-minute, I'm looking here to take a sell position and we're moving up, so I'll wait because this is just before the new hour candle, so I'm waiting, I'm waiting so we can move up. I will then jump into the 1-minute candles as well to start to see what's happening. So you can start to see we did tap and we have a little bit of rejection. So I'm waiting. We're still at 1355, so I'm okay. So now you can start to see the movement happening and I'm waiting. See, I understand where I want to be, but at this point I'm okay where we are. I'm just watching to see what happens with the movement, and you can start to see even at right around 7 a.m., we're starting to move up, 7 a.m., and now we're coming towards the 7 a.m. and then, oops, nope, and I'm going to take a sell. So I've taken a sell at that position, okay? So right now we're going to let the sell run. The spread is big because it's not the actual MetaTrader. So we're going to move through. So I've taken a sell right just before 7 a.m. because what is the 1 minute giving me? The 1 minute's giving me information. Our 5 minutes consolidating. Our 15-minute is there. So we're moving through. And we have our 15-minute right now. We're in the 15-minute range. So maybe we can just move up a bit. Start to move further up. Tap a range. We're moving minutes here. So let me just... So we're still tapping, tapping, tapping. And here we go. We're tapping, and there you go. So now when we pause, so we're now at almost 8:30. So we've been in this trade for a bit. We've moved, let's see, 12:30, 12:28. So we basically moved pips. But more importantly, if I close, you can see now what's happened. So I've closed this trade. Go into our trades, history. We close the sell, we've got 149 pips, okay? But what we've done is when you start to look and you see what's happened, so we took our sell here, we've gone up, I guess I would say 300 pips, and then we've dropped down 200 pips. So the risk to reward ratio there, I mean, once again, as an example, wasn't the greatest, but what I'm saying is because of my confluence on the daily, based on that information of the wick fill, I wasn't too concerned about the overall. More than likely, we're going to have it continue through. So if you turn around and you continue to play this, so let me go into the 15-minute again, and let me continue to play out this information. Is it on the 5-minute, 1 minute? There we go. If I go back into the 15 minutes, so now we're around 8:30. When we start to go through, Let's keep pushing through, and you can see now we've pulled up because we're right at the New York Open. We pulled down, and now we stop. Okay, so here is where you're going to get a little bit more information as we start to go through. And you can start to see how the market is going to play out. We're probably going to go right on that support again, and now we're out of the New York session. So you can see where there was clearly just one tap, but we ranged the entire time. More than likely, when you look at your daily, we did fill that wick. We came all the way through. That's what we were trying to aim for. So I mean, once again, it would be easier if I had multiple screens open to see this, but we did fill that wick. But once again, this support level is being, I guess, you know, it's being there's not going to be any hits off of it. More than likely, we're getting to that point where we're still ranging, but it's being respected, and that's what we're doing. So now when we start to go through and we start to see what's happening here, so if we go through and we look, so now we're at Wednesday, we're starting to drop through 4, 8, 12. Okay, so now we are here once again with the daily, or with the 4 hour. We go back to the daily. You can see still we're consolidating. So there hasn't been a lot of movement. There's been a lot of movement up and down, but now once again we're coming into our 6 a.m. time frame again. So now we're on the Wednesday. We have a rejection once again of this price level. So we've tapped it once again, similar to what we did here. But more importantly, what you can see is the range for the 1 hour over the last few days hasn't been that big. So it's only gone to 1235 to 1228. So there hasn't been a significant move yet. So now we're coming over here. I'm going into the 15-minute, and I'm going to start watching the 15-minute candles again. So now here's where your move starts. Dropping back into the daily, we're coming towards a support level. So now what I'm looking at is I'm saying to myself, okay, if we're dropping still, more than likely we're going to follow the same pattern that we followed on Tuesday. So once again, I'll jump back into my 5-minute. We can see that there's big candle rejections. My 15-minute, we're still dropping. So now I'm going to drop back in. I'm going to do one more bar. We have a pullback, so almost a consolidation. So at the same time, I'm going to jump into my 5-minute. We can jump and see what's happening. We had a pull up, so there was a little bit of a movement there. 7 a.m. So now 7 a.m. is starting to pull up. I don't have any information to help me make a decision at this point because we're sort of at what I would consider our lowest point because we did come close to our support level. So here's another area where when you look at your trading and you say, okay, well, I want to take trades, there's nothing for me to take a trade yet because I don't have enough information on where the market is going. So I'll sit back and wait and I'll watch and I'll take a look. So now we're here on the 15 and we have a little bit of a push up. So more than likely we've reached a support level that's being respected. We've tapped it so many times, but we haven't really broken through it. Our last 3 15-minute candles have been a push up. You can see our 5-minute is starting to push. So now what I do is I start to look at our smaller time frames and say, hey, does this make sense? Is this sort of what we should be looking for? And at this point it is. We did fill this wick. We're looking to fill these wicks here. We're still early towards the New York Open, which is in about 30 minutes. And now I'm looking at the hour. More than likely now, I think we're going to 1235. We have a wick here on the left. So let me just zoom in a bit for everyone to see that. You have a wick here on the left that we want to get filled. That's what I'm aiming for. So if you turned around and you said, okay, how much do I want to hold it for? I would say, okay, we're going from 1232 to about 1233. So we're doing, you know, or 1234. So you're doing about 200 pips. So you know what? Maybe you get 50 pips, 100 pips out of that. Erase all the drawings, go in here. So now if I jump into our 5-minute candle, we're going to drop the speed down so I don't get knocked out. I'm going to play. So now what I'm doing is I'm waiting. We have We have our 7:30 candle forming. We're having a little bit of a pullback, right? So we're watching our candle pullback. I'm going to take a buy position. I'm going to do this and hit accept. So now we're going to watch it play out, okay? So more than likely, I'm aiming for this level over here. So if I was to turn around, I was aiming for this level right over here, and that is 1234. So that's where I want to be. So if we start moving through, let's see how we go. Well, and so we opened up and we spiked down. So I would have been stopped out because that would have killed my risk to reward. So let me just close and let's take a look at that trade. Oops, one. I think I have it open already. Yeah, so I lost on that trade. And there should be a way for me to open this one. Here we are. Okay, so we went from, we had our close, so we dropped and we broke through that resistance level, or sorry, support level, and now we're basically exiting. I would have blown my account there. Well, I don't know why you would have blown it. It's just a 1-to-1 risk to reward ratio, right? So I mean, at this point, we're at 1228, so we were at 1232, so we would have lost 400 pips at that point. We lost basically 385 pips at that point. So I don't know why anyone would have blown their account. That's the reason why I'm sort of showing this. And then we'll let this run. We'll see what happens all the way through. So that was your 8 a.m. open. And we can start to move a little bit further. So now we're starting to climb back up. This is the New York Open. So you can see once again, with that momentum that we did have through here, you can see that now as we start to pull through, there's all these wicks. More than likely the ones to the left here should get filled now because we did have that momentum down. And what I was saying in terms of our daily, when we go into our daily, we're still tapping that resistance range, or sorry, that support range. So we're still hitting that level. So more than likely we're moving in that direction. So now when we go back into the 15, when we start to see the next movement, okay, and wow, okay, there was news today. All right, that's cool. So that's at 10:15. There, 10 o'clock. There was news. So there must have been a release, and that shot it all the way up. Okay, so there you go. Once again, I'm doing this on the fly, so I didn't even know that was happening either. So we can see that we did have news, and news was really pushing. And now when we go to the daily, we're moving in that range. So, you know, keep that open, you would have made a lot of money. So let's go Thursday, Friday. So Friday, at this point, when we look at where we are in the 4-hour, we did tap our daily resistance level, and now we've pulled back. So you can start to see gold, I mean, at this point is a little bit shifty, but yeah, people are saying I was right technically. Yeah, I mean, I was. I mean, once again, your simple support and resistance on the daily did show that, but I mean, once again, you don't want to get caught holding too much of a drawdown. And I mean, I think if we had a little bit more information on the news, it would have helped us a bit, but let's go back. So now we're going to go on to Sunday. So Sunday, we take a look and we see what's happened. Sunday has already started. I'm not too worried too much about Sunday at this point. I'm looking now at my charts and I can look clearly at the 4-hour. I can see now we're at another level. So what I'll do is I'll move this up to my next point here, because this to me here, this is insignificant now. Because what do we have here now? We wrong number. Oops, let me do this. when we look at our next level, you can start to see how things are starting to make sense now. So now we have a little bit more information and we can say to ourselves, okay, hey, now what do we think is going to happen? More than likely we're going to have upward pushes. So now we're on Sunday. You can see there's more of a visual, so you have a little bit of a trend going. And when you start to move into Monday, now here we are. So let's go into Monday and we'll start to move through. We drop back down. Yeah, let's go here. So we're up at this level, so we'll skip Monday because I just saw what happened. Tuesday, okay, here we are. So Tuesday, we're over here. Now I'm looking at my daily, and my daily shows potential for moving further up. Because once again, when we look at our trend, just from a simplistic level, once again, there's nothing to tell me that we shouldn't continue in this movement and we shouldn't be going further up in this direction, okay? So when we're looking at this, this is what we're looking at. Once again, my daily support and resistance levels are still the same. I haven't changed anything. I'm modifying my support and resistance levels in my smaller time frames because those are the ones that I'm working on within the day. So once again, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to look at these levels here, and I'm going to say more than likely this is probably a good sorry, let me do this again. This is more than likely a very good resistance level. We've had multiple touches. This is our 1 hour chart. When I go into our 15, you can see the 15 is very erratic, but the 15 also gives us a lot of information. This actually probably will help us a lot more with our trading now, is because we have a lot of areas where we have price taps. So these wick fills now, or these wicks, gives me indication that, you know, if we do head up, we're more than likely going to these areas here. So this gives me a little bit more information. Here you can see we tapped a zone which was, you know, over to the left, but more than likely now we can start to see that we're moving in a direction upwards movement just based on that information. So we have price that was tapped and rejected, but more than likely we should come back to that price eventually. So let me do this. I'm going to jump into our 15 and I'm going to play this out for a bit. So here we go. And that's sort of what's happening. All right, so perfect. So this is actually a really good spot for us once again. Similar to what I was saying, we had a rejection in price at this lower level here. But more importantly, we're hunting this area over here. You can see sort of the candles are moving. We did come into this price level here because once again, when you look left, you can clearly see what we're doing. But more importantly, our support and resistance are pretty straightforward. We've mapped out a trade, we've framed everything, and that allows us to look at what we're doing here. So when we start to go through and we start to play out a bit, so we got that, we got tap down, tapping down, coming up. All right, so here we are. See, we tapped right away, we tapped that level. So at our 7 o'clock, you can start to see now we're tapping ranges. More than likely, what I'm looking for at this point in the 5-minute chart is to fill this range. If I take a buy position right here, I'm looking to fill that level. That's where my aim is, so that's what I'm going to be looking to do. So I'm going to take a buy. I'll take all this stuff out, and we're going to accept that buy. And let's just play this out. Okay. And let's see where we're going. Oh, and we are at, sorry about that, we're at 12:51, so we're stopped out again at that point. So I close and let this play out. So we're here, 8:15, and we're moving through. So we actually that was probably our top level. So when we look at what we did here, we didn't have a fill, so we actually had we were at the top of the range, so we went back down, and now we're continuing through that pattern, and we dropped all the way into our resistance level again. And now we've our support level, we've broken support, come back down into that range, and we are now dropping right into that range. So now when we look at our daily, here's where we've tapped into that zone. So Judgment call once again, pulled up, made a mistake, we ended up going through, and now we're pushing further down. So when we go back and we review that trade and we say, okay, well, what exactly happened? When we go in here, you can see we were actually not breaking this resistance level. Looking at the daily, that was a very strong, or looking at the hourly, that was a strong resistance. Looking at the 4-hour, it was another strong resistance level, so we weren't going through this. Simulator is soft Forex. That's what we're looking at right now. So you can see where we have issues, where we ended up taking a buy. We were buying basically right at that top level. Our hourly time frame, when we look, it was still pulling through. What happened was we took buys at small resistance level, then sell. Yes, that's exactly what happened. So now you can start to see as we go through 10 o'clock hour, 11 o'clock, and now we're just dropping further down into this range. And now we're at 12:15, 12:14, and here we go into the new daily. So our new daily's tapped a new range. So we're on Thursday. Okay, let's go Thursday. Here we are, Thursday. So now we have a judgment call. So we're back to Thursday morning. So I've lost 2 days in a row. We're now here. Let's move our resistance level, our support level here. This, we can take a look and see if we have anything. Where we're going, give me a second, let me just figure out what this looks like. We've had a continuation drop, so I'm going to move this to be a resistance on the 15. That was probably going to be our range at this point. So if we start to look at the 15-minute coming before 7 a.m., we dropped right at 7 a.m. and let's see, 7:15, consolidating, push up, 7:30, 7:45. So now at this point, we look at our hour, we're ranging, but more importantly, when we look at this point in the hour, you can start to see, this is sort of the things that I look at, is we haven't really broken this level yet. And when I go to my 4-hour, and now we drop this down a bit more, you can start to see at this point, where do we want to be? More than likely, we're going to start pulling back down to fill this wick over here. So this is what I'm looking at. If we're doing anything, we're going to probably fill this wick. We came down once, we filled it, pulled out, but we did tap this support level. So we're looking left, we do have that information. So now what I'll do is I'll go further in, erase all this, and I will turn around and jump into the 1 minute, and I will look. So more than likely, when I see the 1 minute, you can see clearly we tapped over here, never came back, still pulling down. So if I turn around and I take a sell position at this point, again, we should have success based on this information. So let's take a look if I'm right or if I'm wrong. All right, so jump into the 15-minute. So 15-minute is still bouncing a bit. We can zoom in a bit. So 15-minute now is okay. So yeah, so you can start to see there are some instances where I actually know what I'm doing potentially. So now we're moving into almost the 8 o'clock hour. So let's see how we shift into 8. And here's the 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock should be a violent move down potentially, or we're going to spray up. So let's take a look. But you can see how the candle's struggling. For me, this just means that there's a potential issue with where we're at in terms of this level. This could possibly be a point where we move the opposite direction, but at the same time too, you could have closed before 8 o'clock, or you can let this one ride. So we're moving further down. We're still having a struggle with that level. Are we going to move to tap which zone? More than likely we should be going down. When I'm looking at the hour candle, we have a little bit of an issue. It's not moving as much as I would like it to. So we'll see how it ends up going. And then at this point too, when you look at what's happening at this level, when you're looking and it's not, and it's starting to stall, this is where I'll be scanning our smaller time zones. So our smaller time zones have not shown me anything to say that we're going to start pushing the opposite way yet. So this is where you can cheat a bit and say to yourself, okay, as I'm watching, like, what's happening in my shorter time frames? So my shorter time frames, you know, they're erratic, but then once again, they're not really touching their next levels, right? So now, you know, everyone's so worried about the bigger time frames, but here, you know, when you start looking at your smaller ones, you still have that little bit of a pattern. You know, when you start to look here, still going down. So, you know, your larger time frame, right? Obviously, you want to work off of your 15-minute at this point, but your smaller time frames will help you visualize sort of what's happening, and it allows you then to say, okay, you know what? This looks like downward momentum. You know, the 15 minutes taking a little bit longer than usual for me to keep moving, but I should be okay at that point, just based on what I'm seeing in these candles. So we're still, and now when you start to look, you can start to see also too, this is where I start to, you know, have a little bit of a thought process when I start to see. So we're coming towards 8:30. Like I said, I don't know if there was news today or not at this time, but now I'm starting to look at these areas over here. Okay, so this is what I'm starting to look at. We've started to push down a bit. I'm looking for potentially to take profit in those areas just because of the way the market's moving, and also the fact that we had a lot of movement over here, but it hasn't been anything strong. Once again, we're in the 5-minute. If I turn around and I jump into the 15-minute, we'll get a clearer vision. But I'm working off the smaller time frames here because of my range, and also because I'm just working this session. I'm not working other sessions, so I'm not too concerned about the overall picture. Like, I'm not looking at my 4-hour going, okay, you know, this is what's happening. I had my overall picture for the 4-hour. I don't have to revisit it anymore. I'm looking clearly on my shorter time frames to give me a better idea of what's happening. So as we start to play this out, hopefully there's no news at 8 o'clock or 8:30, and we should potentially see movement further down. And at this point too, you know, we dropped about 50 pips. There is a point where you could turn around and say, hey, I want to just take my profit at that point and leave. But more than likely, you know, here at this point, we did come up, we're almost coming into that zone, the one that I was talking about, once again, just 5 seconds ago. We're coming into this area. So if it gets to that area, that's what I'm looking to exit that trade at that point. So if it comes down to that point, it just about touched it, so more than likely it should. So I closed. Okay, so that's, you know, I guess I do actually know how to trade, so that's pretty good. I'm happy about that. But you can see what I did essentially here is you had basically, I opened my sell here based on a shorter time frame, but more than likely, but what I did, I also opened it. You can see the timing. When I opened it, it was just before the 8 a.m. hour. So just before the New York Open, I could have had a push to grab, you know, 80 pips at that point, but I ended up grabbing 200 pips, holding it a little bit longer. But there was nothing wrong with closing here because you knew at 8 o'clock that more than likely we were going to push up for a pullback, and then you could come back in. Once again, because we were watching the shorter time frames, and you know, your 15-minute candle at this point was giving you that direction. The idea here is, you know what, I'm happy with grabbing that range, and now I'm done for the day. So I made that trade and I'm basically done. But at no point, if you look at these candles, was I in any trouble? You know, you could clearly see once again when support and resistance, you know, you draw them properly. You know, not to say that you can't draw them properly, or there's a different way to draw them. It does help you in the sense that, okay, we're moving in that direction. More than likely, that's the direct, you know, your overall direction. Going on to your daily, once again, we had that direction that we needed to see. The 4 hour, you know what, we were tapping that resistance level here at this point, almost a consolidation. It's giving that information, but more importantly, your 15-minute, your 5-minute, we're all telling you that more than likely we're moving in the downward direction, just because once again, when you're looking, you can clearly see we were never getting to this level again based on the momentum. So we went down, went up, and then we went down. There was nothing here telling me that we were going to go in this direction. So we had that downward momentum, once again confirmed when you're looking at your daily candles, right? So when we're looking at our daily candle, we were saying more than likely we're going to fill this wick here because we have downward momentum. We're just suddenly not going to change direction on a Thursday, even at the same time. So, so when we look, and if we're going to still play this out, so we can play this out a little bit further, and we're going to see it's probably going to go back a little bit further. It tapped it again. So now when you look at this right here, momentum, more than likely this wick is going to get filled. We tapped into it, and that's the other reason why I closed, is because, you know, a new candle pops up. This is where you get that pullback, right? So now you're stuck again, where, you know, if we keep this, we keep playing this, right? So if we turn around and then we look, so you can see right away we did have that wick fill. But you can see it took another 2 candles for us to go further down. So depending on your trading plan, you know, I got out at this candle, but, you know, you could have been in it, but what ends up happening is you get that pullback coming back up over here, and now suddenly you're like, uh-oh, have I like exhausted that point? But more than likely we're going to go further down. What you would do in this situation, if I hadn't taken profit at that point, I would have then turned to my hour candle and said, okay, where are we going with my hour candle? Yes, more than likely we should be filling the hour wick, right? So you can look on your hour wick. More than likely we should be filling that. We do have momentum. So when you start to look, we're right at the New York Open, NYSE Open, which is the stock market. So now when we start to pull, we'll see how this works out. So now we're consolidating, and we've gone into now 10 o'clock, dropped. So once again, you had another wick fill. If you were looking at that point and holding still, you would have been about 120 pips to the minus. You would have been 230 pips to the plus. Okay, so you still would have had a proper risk to reward ratio, but once again, this is later on in the morning. I don't really want to be there. I'm looking to really capture that initial move from the New York Open. So you can start to see now we've dropped, you know, so right at later on in the day, towards the end of the day, we had this massive drop, and we're still moving through. So now we dropped even further. So the end of the day. So once again, momentum carried us. You look at the daily wick was filled. That was our goal, right? Originally what we said was we expected these wicks to be filled, and essentially they were. So, I mean, once again, when you look at your trading style, you can see we really didn't move this support or resistance. We had, you know, a couple of trades here that went well. This trade went bad. This trade went good. Let me just erase that. Let me just open up what we did here. So you can start to see, so we lost 2 trades, we won 1 trade. So yeah, so the 2 trades that we lost, once again, there was a news event, potentially issues there, but we did win 2, we won 2 and lost 2. The ones that we lost, now we go back and we examine, we realize that we basically sold at we bought at a level that we shouldn't have been bought, and we bought at resistance. Here we sold at support, which helped us through There was also probably a news event which killed us as well. So there's a lot of information there. So like at a high level, just looking at just what you're doing generally, you can see using various support and resistance, using very straightforward trading, you shouldn't have any issues reviewing the markets. So now we're here on Sunday, so let's go through Sunday. Actually, I'll go into the 4 hour. So Sunday 4 hour. Here's Monday 8, 12. So now here we go. Here we're in the Monday. I'm going to jump into our hourly time frame, 6 o'clock. So more than likely now we're in another situation. Okay, so here's our daily. You can start to see how the daily is being formed. We've tapped all the way into, what's this price level? We've tapped all the way into 1209. Okay, so we're at a very, very low level. You know, one can say, okay, maybe I want to adjust my support level a bit now to come to this point because we did actually tap, but we have a strong bull candle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into my 4 hour. I'm not going to trade today. I'm going to let it move. So you can see we did fill that out, that wick, and now we're Tuesday. Here we go. So Tuesday, we're coming back in. We're probably in the same situation. When I look at Tuesday, we're now bouncing off this support level, but more importantly, we haven't seen anything where we're dropping. So this is probably going to be more of a trend related trade. So now when I jump in at 6 a.m., I wake up, I'm like, oh, okay, so we have upwards momentum. I look at our daily starting to push up a bit. You can start to see we have that bit of momentum. Our 4 hour, we're starting to get momentum again. So here we go. So when we look at the next week, we're looking and we're saying to ourselves, okay, what are we looking for at this point? So give me a second, there's a question here. Is it safe to say that we were mainly working off just one major support and resistance area from higher time frames, but it would be beneficial to plot additional support and resistance levels in the smaller time frames? Yeah, I mean, ideally that's what I do. This is sort of what I look at, is it just helps me frame my mind. You're always drawing lines to basically give your visual cues. You technically don't need any of these visual cues. You can draw as many or as little lines as you want, but the idea is to help you give you visual cues. I like to draw out the lines just so that I have an idea of where I've been, you know, where I'm going, things in that nature. So once again, we're looking at the hour. We're coming in at 7 a.m. So here we go to the 15-minute. We got a lot of potential here for fills. So I'm looking right now, this potentially as a wick fill, this potentially as a wick fill. So, you know, over here too, there's a big price level here. So I'm at 6 a.m. So let's carry on. Give me a second, decrease that. Whoa, okay. That was interesting. So, you know, 6 a.m. that happens. 6:45, we drop back down, and now we're coming to 7 a.m. So here we are at a very, very interesting point. So at 7 a.m., so we start to look. We did tap the 1228 region. Now what we do is we look into our 4 hour. We have momentum going up. We have momentum on the daily. So more than likely we should carry up a little bit through. So let's take a look. So we're here. 7 a.m. rolls around, 7:05. All right, so here we go. Once again, when we look at this, the question here, is it going to go back up? More than likely it should, because we have momentum. So what I'll do is I'll take a buy at 10 after 7. This is once again 15 minutes before the USA Open for currency. So I'm going to take a buy here. So let's do that. And I'll accept that buy, and let's see how we play it out. So we're pulling up. All right, so now we stop. Okay, so we're at 7:30. So here we go, 7:30. You can clearly see what I did here, okay? So I'm looking, let me do this. So I took a buy here, and I'm gonna go through my whole thought process on why I took a buy. This was my target. I know that the market is still not open yet, so there is a potential for us to make some movement. We had a drop here, but more than likely we had this candle here that pulled back. So what does that tell me? More than likely we're going to have upwards momentum. Going back in and looking at the overall time frame, give me a second, let me just move this. We have our push from the 4-hour, our 1-hour wick fill, that's what we're looking for. So in this instance, I didn't even have to trade the New York Open. I was in before it because of how the market set up. And this is what I do a lot of times is, people say, well, I only want to trade the open. And I always say, well, take a look an hour before the open on various sessions and see if you can snag your money before that, right? Because now when I close, which I would have closed at 7:30, that's the candle I'm looking for. So when I close everything, you can clearly see at this point, we've gone from 1224 to 1227. So if I turn around and I look at my trades, we've done another, 200 pips, so 20 pips at this point. And that trade basically, so you can see that trade we started at right at 7:10 and we closed at 7:30. So we were in 20 minutes and we were in for 200 pips. Now, obviously, you could open multiple positions. You could do whatever you wanted. If I had more positions, I could open more and let them run. But here the key is, more than likely, when we come to this range here, we're going to have a bit of a pullback. So watch what happens. And this is why I talk about price levels in different price zones and also being aware of your major resistance. Well, not a major resistance, but a resistance at this level. And when you look at it, you can say, okay, what makes sense for me in my trading plan? My trading plan is to get 10 pips. I got 20, so I'm happy. So now when we start to go up, you can start to see right away the candle tap that region. So we had a little bit more to grab, which was not a big deal. And now we're waiting for it to pull up. More than likely going to fill that wick. And now 8 a.m. As we start to pull through, you can start to see we're going back up. But now here you can see where even though, if you waited for the 8 a.m. drop to happen to get back into the market, you still didn't get a better position than what you have right here. And the other thing is when I look at 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., it's out of the news environment because a lot of times news happens at 8:30. So I can still snag positions before 8 o'clock when maybe the market starts consolidating for news, and 8:15 when the news actually comes out pretty heavy. Now we're in 9 a.m. We start to move through. Now we're here 9:25, which is basically just a few minutes before the the NYSE Open, and you can start to see now we did have that push right through. But once again, if you held the trade, there's no reason why it wouldn't do this. And the reason why I say why it wouldn't do it, because when you look at the 15-minute, here you can clearly see 15-minute we're consolidating. So we tapped the region, but when we came back down here at 7:45, here at 8 o'clock, we pushed again at 8:15. 8:30, 9:15. Here's the 9:15 candle basically. You'll see that there was nothing to tell me, and this is market structure. There's nothing to tell me here that the market's going down. Okay, so you can see we have consolidation over here, breakout. Consolidation essentially, we had a little bit of a drop, but for the most part, this section over here is consolidation, and then we had breakout. So when you start to look at market structure, you can start to identify these things are happening every single day. You can see there's a push right at NYSE Open. There's pushes between 7 and 8. You can see how I'm focused on just specific time frames during the day. So you as a trader, when you start working out these various trading opportunities and you start to go through it, you can now start to see how the market plays itself. But more importantly, you can see, as time continues, what's happening. And we're here Wednesday, 13. All right, so here we go. Wednesday at 7 a.m. now. So once again, I'm back here where I am. All right, so let's take a look. what about those wicks, top side of the breakout? Well, the wicks were filled. You can see how wicks were filled here. All the wicks were filled on the hour candle. So now we have a pullback, and now we're looking to see what is going to continue here. So once again, I drop back in. Yeah, those wicks were all filled. All those wicks were filled. There was nothing, once again, when we go back and we look at that movement, there was nothing to give me indication that we were moving in the opposite direction. We had a minor support here. So when you look and you look very closely, this is a minor support level. The wicks never passed through. There was not confirmation of a sell here. We're at a 15-minute time frame. 15-minute time frame is not confirmations for change in trends. You want change in trends, you have to look at your higher time frames. That's not a huge candle. There's no rejection of anything in the large candles because that was before our 8 o'clock, right? You have to look and you have to say, okay, what makes sense at this point? And if you're working in a smaller time frame, you have to realize smaller time frames aren't going to be indicative of a change in trend. You're going to look at your higher time frames and say, okay, where am I going? And now I'm looking at my daily and I start to see my daily at this point and I say, okay, well, what's happening here? We have tapped the price zone. And in the daily, when you look at our price zone, you can clearly see it's been tapped. Look, just look left. You can see this is all a price zone right over here. We're all in that area. So once again, we have to take a look and say, okay, what do we think is going to happen? We still have our initial resistance and our initial support that we drew the other week. So more than likely, should we continue? More than likely, we should continue up. But this possibly could be consolidation. So we have to be aware of that. So now when we go back in and now we go to the next day and we start to look. So here we go. So let me just do this. And we drop back in. So I'm going to drop back into my 15-minute time frames. We're at 6:15. All right, now we're 6:15, 6:30, 6:45. So now, once again, when I look, I'm looking here and I'm saying, okay, I don't have any information yet. Drop into the smaller time frames. What do I see? Okay, I don't have any information here. I don't like what I see yet. Okay, so now I'm in my 1 minute. My 1 minute, I'm starting to see here we have a little bit of steps potentially, so maybe we're going to step up to this level. I am aware of this overall trend in this direction for the 1 minute, but I mean, once again, that's a lot of noise because we did have a full push down for the most part for the last few hours. So now I'm going to start to go into my 5 minute. I'm going to say, okay, fine, let's see what's happening in my 5 minute. So 5 minute. So we pushed up. So once again, this is now starting to indicate to me that we're going to have some upwards bull movement. These kind of wicks with these rejections are giving me hints to say that the market wants to move in a certain way. So as I start to see 7 o'clock, all right, so more than likely, all things being equal, I'm looking to fill that potential wick. So what am I going to do? I'm going to erase that. I'm going to drop into my higher time frame, and I'm looking. We have a bit of a consolidation. I'm looking at my 4 hour. We have a little bit of consolidation, but we do now have what I would consider, and this is where it gets a little tricky. We have almost like a consolidation area, right? We have a bit of a consolidation block. So what does that mean? So right away, so here in this instance, I'm going to look and I'm going to drop back into my shorter time frames and I'm going to watch the time frames play out because I don't like what I see yet. So there you go. So we did fill that wick in the next 5 minutes. So this wick was filled. That's what I was expecting right at the 7 a.m. push. So we had a push. So if you were quick on the draw, you would have made money off of that, but I'm not looking for that because I would have been having to play off the 1 minute. And now you can clearly see now we're starting to push down. So we had that fill on the 1 minute and now we've dropped. So I'm not looking for that. So I'm looking to see what's happening. Okay, so now I'm starting to get a little bit of information. We're now 20 after 7 a.m. In the morning, and I'm getting information now. So I can start to see what's happening. Okay, so now I'm going to take a buy because I like the way that this is situating. We have a push here, so I'm going to take a buy at this point. Close that, accept, and now let's see how this plays out. All right, so we're moving up. All right, so now we're consolidating a bit. We have a little bit of an issue. We're about 200 pips deep. All right, so now I am moving through 8 a.m. I have to close. So I'm closing, lost 200 pips at that point, and there's your drop. So once again, I didn't like what was happening. I get out of the position, I lose my 200 pips. I'm okay at that point. Question. Hey Ted, I hear you talk about market liquidity. Please show off a quick example if you can. I do that every single time I show you a candle wick. So here you could see we were looking to fill that wick. We didn't fill it. That was liquidity. We pushed all the way through. So now let's see where we're going. Further down. So what did we learn from this? Looking at the 4-hour candle, that was a major resistance point, and we ended up dropping down at that level. Yeah, it would have been. Of course, at this point, you could have shorted. I mean, once again, I'm just giving you an example of my thought process based on what I saw based on before the 8 a.m. push. The 8 a.m. push came, dropped down. So if you'd waited till 8 and taken sells, you would have been in a perfect position at that point. And you can clearly see what I was hoping for was just a quick wick fill. It didn't happen, and it dropped right back down. So there you go. So you can see now we're dropping, dropped further. We tapped that original level, and now we're dropping down. And market open for NYSE, and we're still dropping down. So more than likely, we're going to range, and we filled that wick. So here's an example once again. When you look at this wick fill, we have momentum. More than likely, we're going to fill that wick. But look at how long it took to fill. So that's something you have to be aware of. So when you look at wick fills, it might not necessarily happen right away. And when we look at this candle as an example, this is your 8:30 your 8:45 candle. It took us all the way. It took us basically 5 hours to fill that candle. Right? So we moved all the way 5 hours before it filled that candle. So you have to be aware of that instance where we have that push. Because we have momentum doesn't mean that it's going to fill. But here's the thing too. So if you took a sell at this point and you said, okay, I want to fill basically 200 pips, you would only be in about a 300 pip drawdown the whole entire time. More than likely, you would when you look at where you're at, it would be a 300 pip drawdown the entire time. So when you're looking at that, manage your trades accordingly. You should be fine. All right, so we're going to keep going. So now we're on Thursday. All right, so let's keep going through Thursday. London Open, Asian Open, Asian Open. All right, so now here we go. I'm just going to get up here. Okay, so here's our momentum that we were looking for yesterday. It didn't happen. Yep, there we go. So, I mean, you can sort of see, eventually it went to that direction, right? And 6:15, 6:30, 6:45, here we go, 7 o'clock. Okay, so 7 o'clock again, and what you're looking at, okay, there's a question here. Why use inverse risk reward? I wasn't using inverse risk reward. I was just giving an example that the most drawdown you would have been in would have been just 100 pips more than what you would have gained. So if you had held the position for 300 pips, you would have won 200 pips. What I was trying to explain there is the market didn't move really far away. So if you did at that one point and you did want to hold and wanted to be stubborn, you could maybe extend your risk potential to get that gain, knowing very well that you had momentum for that. But I mean, once again, it's subjective. I wouldn't recommend doing it, but it was just more of like, hey, that's sort of what happened. Okay, so now we're at Thursday, 7 a.m. Wake up again. Had a losing day yesterday. And now what we're looking at is we're looking at the overall movement. And coming back to what we were saying, okay, so it seems like that was a weird candle because we had upward movement downward and now we're back to the upward push. So more than likely we should be purchasing a buy position at this point. I'm going to look on my 15-minute candle and I'm aiming to basically go, we're at 12:35. I'm looking for essentially a wick fill at this point in this range over here. Give me a pen. I'm looking for this wick fill, but more than likely we may see momentum here for a bit. So I'm going to wait a bit and I'm going to see what happens. So let me jump into my 5-minute chart to give me a little bit more information. Yeah, so we pulled down and started to pull back up. My 1-minute chart, we're consolidating. We do have a major area here, but we're consolidating and we started to move a bit down. So I'm going to wait to give myself information because I mean this looks like a good area to hit. You can see here based on our trend, we haven't really broken it. We're still moving upwards. It's just a matter now of waiting for confirmation at this point. Echo on my mic. It's just probably the lag on the program. All right, so here we go. So when we drop back into the 15, actually I'll drop into the 5. Let's play off the 5. 7 a.m. There's your push, another push, consolidation, drop down. 7:25, 7:30. 7:35, so now we've dropped. So we never filled that. So when we looked at what we were doing trying to fill this, we never really did. We tapped it. So that's where if you took a buy at this point and ran it up, you would probably have to close as soon as you saw this candle form and start to drop. So if you were looking at that point and wanted to gamble with that fill, you could have probably got it, but you'd have to wait. So now we're dropping 7:45, 7:50, 7:55. All right. So now we're coming towards the 8 a.m. open on the 5-minute. I'm looking at the 1-minute. There's nothing to tell me that we are going to be going up. Once again, I'm looking at these levels. I'm looking at the 15-minute. More than likely, we have momentum to fill this. If we turn around and we look at our 4-hour, we've hit a major peak, a price level at that point. Our 1-hour, we're starting to drop, so we're good there, and now our daily starting to pull back a bit. So you know what, at this point we turn around and take a sell, and now we will play this out on the 5-minute. Let's see how we do. So we're in just before the 8 a.m. hour and we'll see how we do. So right away, so we got our drop. There's your drop. You went from basically 80, 90 pips. Your risk reward was 55, so you had a 2-to-1 risk to reward. So you can say to yourself, I'm good. I took my catch off the New York Open, the USA Open. Looking at the 1-minute chart, it's exactly the way it was supposed to play out. Now when you drop into the shorter time frames, you can say to yourself, okay, do I want to gamble for this further drop? We have momentum, so let's see how we play out. So you know what, we'll hold this position a little bit longer. Let's see if we can squeeze it and go from there. All right, so we're coming to 8:30, and there was probably news coming up, and we would have gotten pushed out. So here's what we talk about is when we go all the way back. When we go all the way back over here, that was our initial candle. We close our position here where I would have liked to close. We take our profits. We're happy. We didn't get that fill, but once again, we were looking just to get that direction based off of our 1-minute candle. That's what our 1-minute was telling us. We did get those fills on the 1-minute. We were looking at that. So now when we look at our 15-minute and as we start to go through, you can start to see now here, we dropped even further. We eventually did get that fill that we wanted. right at around the market open. But there was a pullback. So here, once again, like I said, if you want to get greedy, you have to accept this pullback, 200 pip pullback for 300 pip gain, okay? So this is the thing. If you are looking at these specific times and you're saying, okay, you know, at this point, when I drop into the 5 minute and I go through my analysis here, you can say to yourself, okay, I was happy with getting 2 to 1, right? Because here we would have gone up 140 pips. This was the highest we would have gone up, 150 pips, 300 pips. So you still would have gotten 2 to 1. There would have been more pips, but you would have had more drawdown, and you would have had to run for another, I guess, another hour. You would have had to go for another hour. So these are things that when you look at, when I leave a trade, people are still in. They get a better move. You get more pips, but I was done. I was done at this point. I got my pips, open up 3 positions, close it, and I'm good. So that's what you're looking at. And as you can continue, more than likely, we're going to go further down, but I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about just getting what I want out of the move and then carrying on. So now we're back up again, tap that area. Now we're further down, and you can start to see now how the market moves in cycles, right? So when you start to see the waves, we got this, you know, bottom wave, gone all the way back up, drop back down, gone all the way back up, drop back down. But you can see when it drops, what time are we looking at that drop, okay? So when you start to look and you say to yourself, okay, when are we dropping? Just after New York Open, just after North American currency session open. Like, these are things as a trader, when you start to recognize these specific times, when you get these initial pushes, you know that at this point, okay, I'm done. I could have taken a trade from here at the New York Open, dropped it here. I would have gotten 200 pips with basically no drawdown because I know the New York Open. Look at, sorry, give me a second here. If you turn around and you zoom in and you look at this wick, you can see we have a resistance level here that we drew, essentially. That wick is just before the New York Open. New York Open happens, 10 minutes later we get that drop, but look what happens, it pulls all the way back again for the next, I would say, you know, umpteen number of minutes. But if you knew that this is your New York session, your NYSE Open, and attack that position knowing very well that we had momentum, you could snipe those small little positions and be profitable. And that's where, you know, instead of holding it and saying, okay, I have a plan, I want 50 pips, I want 80 pips out of this range, I can grab it quick and I'm done. And I'm well aware that when we start moving, and you can see if you go into the 1 minute frame, you can see we had that drop. The one minute candle, the next 1 minute candle would be your key. So if you zoomed in on the 1 minute candle and you started to see this shit happening, and then the next candle, it's giving you a warning saying, hey, get out, because guess what's happening? We're moving up that way. So you have multiple instances where you have opportunity to get out of this trade if you're watching the smaller time frames and you're seeing them develop and it's not something that you're comfortable with. Because when you look at this kind of trade here, you see how they're all zigzagging, consolidating, and dropping? Here you can start to see we have a little bit of an upward trend happening. Okay? So it's very important when you start to look at those various times that you're entering trades, you're also aware of our smaller time frames. All right, so now we go back and let me jump into the 1 hour. So here's our 1 hour, so we're dropping down, consolidating, 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 drop a bit, back up. So you can start to see how now the market moved. So, so here's 6 a.m. The market has started to move again. So now we're at 6 a.m. We're looking. This is interesting because now we have a huge drop. We're trying to figure out what the hell happened. Nobody knows. This is Friday. I'm not trading Friday. When we look at the daily, you can see now we had continuous drop through the rest of the week, moving forward down. So now when we go on to Friday, we dropped and pulled back. Here's Sunday. Nothing. Monday drop, so more than likely we're coming to this level again. When we look, we're in Tuesday, so now we're in a new week. So I'm back here again, I'm looking, okay, what's happening here? So let's go through the day, hour. All right, so 6 a.m. So we're back, 6 a.m. on Tuesday morning, getting ready to trade again. I have no clue what's happening. All I know is my daily support and resistance has been respected once again. So what does that tell me? That there has not been a trend change. We're still in a bullish pattern, but we have momentum that is sideways, that we're not really going anywhere, so we have to be aware of that. So now what am I aware of now? As I get a little bit more involved with this chart, these are very, very key price levels, right? Because what happened? We tapped that key price level and pushed down. So now I know with that daily candle coming in here, if I take a buy, I have to be aware of this key price level. So when we go across, we're looking at like 1240-ish. That's our key price level. So when we go out and we start working in our smaller time frames, that is now information that I'm using to formulate my thoughts for the week. So when we go into the 5-minute frame, we see a little bit of a pullback. So we'll let this play out. This is 6 a.m., drop down. 6 a.m., dropping, dropping, dropping. And now here we're at 7 a.m. coming up. So here's your 7 a.m. candle. 7:05, we dropped. So that was your 7 o'clock open. You can see clearly on the 5-minute candles here, we had momentum downwards, price level pushed down. So we could hit that 7 a.m. candle. Once again, looking at our daily, what are we aware of? We're aware of those price levels. We tapped into that price level and pulled back. So now I'm waiting for more confirmation. Once again, sitting back, letting the market do its thing. Okay, we're dropping, we're dropping, we're dropping. Okay, so more than likely, we should have a drop. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to look on my 15-minute candles, and I'm going to start to look to see where we have regions for potential zones. And what's the first thing that I see when I look at this region? Let me do this. When I start to look left, what do I see? Price zone. Now things are starting to make sense. More than likely, we're going to tap that same price zone. So when we look left, where do we see? We see a price zone right there. So if I turn around and erase this, take a sell, very straightforward, accept. So now when we go back into our 5-minute, we should be moving further down. And now we popped up. We're not really moving anywhere, so where are we at in terms of our position? We're still 200 pips out. There we go. So there's our drop. So let's go back into the 1-minute. So you saw how basically right at 7:30 we had our drop. So if you turned around and said, okay, fine, what happened here? This was where we took our position. I would say, sorry, where did we take our position? So if I close this, so we had basically 400 pip pull and we had 150 pip gain. So obviously not proper risk reward, but once again, momentum was down, it just basically took longer. So would we have taken this trade? Probably not. We would have probably got stopped out at this point up here, but you can see there was nothing really happening in the 5-minute charts to say, hey, the market was going to move out of the way, right? You had a minor spike here, which was more than likely around 9 o'clock, but you could see we tapped into a price level here at this point, which matched over here, but we never really moved up. There was always continuous bearish momentum. So when we look at this from a 15-minute candle perspective, there was never any bullish momentum. There was never anything. We didn't see any bullish momentum. The hour candle, same thing. We didn't really have much of a momentum change. It was still dropping. As we start to go through, now you can start to see we're still consolidating. And there's your Wednesday, Thursday, Wednesday, 6 a.m. So now you can start to see how when you looked at your daily, what we were talking about at our daily, we never really had any momentum to say we're breaking this price level. If we were going to, if we were taking buys, that's what we're looking at, but we're coming to that support level again. So now we're here on Wednesday. We're looking at our 5-minute candles. You can clearly see that we have further downward push. There's not been a momentum change. We haven't seen any changes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into this. We're coming close to a resistance level or a support level that we drew, pulling back up, 7 a.m. So now we have a decision. We sit back, take a look at the market. We still have further downward movement. Still consolidating, pushes up, further movement down. So now what we're looking at here is we should more than likely come and tap probably the bottom of this zone. So what I meant by is we came over here. We still have a downward move. We still have downward momentum. We have pushed through here. So I'm looking at my smaller time frame once again. We're at 7:30 in the morning. Looking at my daily, still have a downward push. There's still momentum down. So if I take a sell position at this point, jumping into the 5-minute, we're starting again. So we should be okay. So I'll run this through. So now we're coming into 8 o'clock or 8:30, sorry. And there was a news event. Okay, so we got killed on this one because of the news event. But you can see where we had entries, where we did our entry, we still had a drop. So you still made that drop. So you were able to capitalize on that position. You were still able to get, you know, if you said 50 pips up, 60 pips down, you were still able to get that drop initially. So let me play this out. Let's go back to where we were. So then we had momentum up here and 825. More than likely you would close because there's nothing to say that we're going down at this point. So now when we come up here, we have that movement up, which was a news related event. So we can close this one. And now we can play out the rest of the morning. So that was a huge news event on Wednesday that drove market up. And then we came all the way back down. So now we're coming. So the New York Open basically at 9 o'clock, you basically had that whole pull back down. And now as you go into the 10 a.m. hour, we're starting to, we had basically another huge news event, which I don't know what happened here because we don't have news in front of us. But once again, as you're checking news, you would start to see, you know, like why is that happening? And now you can start to see that we have a lot of just ranging. And this is what I mean by ranging. And this is where I wouldn't be trading because look at the way the market is situated on the shorter time frames. It's just zigzagging. We don't have movement that we should have. So when we drop out into our hour time frame, you can see how choppy it is. So it probably wouldn't be the best thing to do in terms of trading for the gold at that point. All right, so here we are Thursday morning. So we're waiting, wake up. All right. Okay, so here we are again, 6 a.m. looking at the 5-minute charts, looking at our daily. What does our daily look like? Going up. But once again, remember what I said the other day, we're at that price level. So we finally reached this price level, which I was talking about the other day. Remember I said if we take buys, we have to be cognizant of this. So it's finally come up to this price level. So now what we're going to do is more than likely watch to see where this price level goes. Drop back into our 5-minute. You can clearly see here at this point, we're at the top of a range. What I mean by top of the range is we are at this level here. So we have to be wary of this. So when you drop back in, and even though we're not at the top of the daily, you still have to be aware of this minor, what I would consider resistance level, this level over here, because we haven't been there in a while. Like if you look at all these candles here, we haven't been up into this region in a long, long time. So we have to be aware and we have to think logically. Are we going to go there? If we are, we will get telltale signs we are, but if not, we have to be willing to make the assumption that more than likely we're going to be moving back down again. So let's take a look and see what happens, but this is the logic that I go through and I start looking at the daily is, yeah, I would like to see that there's continuous upward momentum, but we are at a key price level that we have to be aware of. So when I drop into the 5-minute and we start playing out, right away you see a rejection. And we're pulling back up. And now, yeah, my audio was off and now it's back. Okay, so now you're at 725. So we're looking 730. Right away you get that push, a little bit more, a little bit of a drop. So more than likely now we have momentum. So I'm going to take a buy. This is before the New York Open because I'm hoping that that momentum will continue. So we're going to see where we go, and now we're going back the other way. And we drop back all the way down. So basically got killed on that trade. Too early of an entry. And let's see what happens. 8 o'clock, further down. Now we're coming to the New York Open. And now we're dropping further through here. So what did we do here? We basically bought at a resistance level. So once again, looking at the daily, that was a key price level. So here's, once again, if you look at that and you say, okay, well, what happened? We had that push up into the key level. So when we go back into the daily, you can see we tapped in that key level and rejected. So if you're watching, you're basically saying, okay, what are you doing? Buying at resistance. We tested that level. I wouldn't have held the trade that long, but it's more of where were we going at that point and what were we doing? And I mean, that's sort of, you know, the situation you get in when you start to trade. Now when we're starting to move, dropping down, came back up for the hour. Now we're in Friday. So Friday we're dropping, Friday. So we should finish off the week now on a bearish momentum. And now we pulled up. So now what we're going to do is look at our daily once again. We have a little bit of a pullback, but once again, we're still at a key level. So now I'm going to drop back into my shorter time frames and I'm going to take a look and see exactly what happens in my shorter time frames. We're ranging. So you can see here, we're ranging back and forth. So we're at 730, more than likely we positioned to sell because there's been nothing to tell me, and the reason why I'm taking a sell is we haven't come to this level anymore. You can see just clearly we haven't been at that level. So in all instances, we should be in a good position for a sell, if I'm right. And we did have the sell at this point here. So that basically filled that original wick of the 5 minutes. So let's keep going. Let's see what happens. And we pulled all the way back up. But then you can see in this point, when we look across, we still haven't reached that level yet. Okay, so when you look at what's happening, you're saying, oh, you know, like another trade busted. Yes, I mean, I would have exited before this because now we're in the NYSE Open. But but what's happening is you can clearly see how that price level is being respected. And if you keep playing this out, it's still being respected. So this is where, you know, when you jump into the smaller time frames, you can start to see how these price levels are respected, and you're saying, okay, where is my best opportunity at this point? It would be to take short positions because we're still ranging. And the idea there at that point, let me close this position, is, you know, we had our initial drop that we wanted, and once again, when I'm looking at my drop, we had our 100 pip drop that we wanted. So if I zoom in and I look at my initial drop, my sell position at 1237, I got the drop that I wanted, right? Because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a tap into this region before the 8 a.m. push. So you can clearly see here at this point, I get 100 pips, I still get 100 pips, I still get 90 pips, right? And that drawdown is 30. So I'm still getting a 3-to-1, but I'm working just off the shortest time frames. And then when I jump into my 15-minute frame, you can start to see we had a little bit of a pull. Your pull down is in that 15-minute candle. Once we start to see it move back up, and if you drop into the 1-minute frame, you can see that once you start to see the 1-minute frame, when you work off 1 minute and you see that huge drop, that's when you're getting out, because now the 1-minute candles start to show you what's happening. So once again, I would have all my screens open, I would see this drop, and as soon as I start to see this momentum switch in the 1 minute, I'm done, because there's nothing here giving me information to say that we're going to continue the drop. I'm looking for a specific move before 8 a.m. at that point to get in and say, hey, I'm done at that point. So here we are, we're on Friday, and we're back up at that price level. We finally punched through it. Look at the daily daily's now broken that price level. So once again, we can clearly see, okay, we're going to go and we should be moving in bearish momentum at that point. So now we're on Monday, Tuesday. So here's your Tuesday morning charts. So we're back again on Tuesday. We're looking. So here we go. All things being equal, here's our 6 a.m. start. 6:15, 6:30, 6:45, 7 a.m. So 7 a.m. was a huge push down. Now look what's happened at 7:15. So this is something that I start to take notice of. We have a huge wick. Okay, so what does that mean? We don't know offhand what it means yet, but it's something to keep in mind. Drop back in the daily, you can start to see the daily may have tapped a price level. So potentially we take a sell at this point, because now when I look further across, I can clearly see the momentum is in a sell formation. So I take a sell. Hopefully this works. Accept. And now we will play this out. So once again, there was your sell. So let's jump into the 1 minute. So you can clearly see here at this point, this is your sell because you had basically a pull up. So you can see at this point, here's your range. So that's as far as it goes. So when I turn around and close, we're just before the 8 o'clock hour. So once again, I'm not doing a great job of keeping track of everything as I'm talking, but when I close, I'm closing just before the 8 o'clock hour. Let's see our risk to reward. 175, 180, 130, almost 1-to-1, not the greatest, but once again, looking at the overall trend, looking where we were, we should be okay. We would have got to 180 over here. So as we start to play this out, there was your further push. So that's, you would have had the 1-to-1 if you had just waited a couple more minutes. And then now you start to see it, it'll start to pull back, 8 a.m. But you can start to see here, when you're looking at the 1 minute charts, we never really go further up. You never really have that momentum that's moving up. So this is where, you know, your 1 minute charts can come in handy, because you could say to yourself, hey, at 7:30 or so, 7:45, if we were at this level, If we don't come back to that in our shorter time frames, more than likely we should be okay for a further drop. That's what I'm looking at when I'm looking. So we're coming close to that level, but we never really break it, and we're still consolidating. Now, when we jump in, this is obviously 8:30, so we may have news that may push it in a certain direction. But you can see, once again, now here's where you had to push up. That's where there was probably news at that point once again. But you can clearly see you had a lot of opportunity, but once again, we were taking that initial drop, which was right over at this specific candle, which was before 8 a.m. So we were able to get in and out before 8 a.m., one-to-one risk to reward before we had this movement up. Now, once we tap this range, you could say, okay, there's an argument to say at 8 a.m. we had this push up, I can ride that push all the way through, which is correct. But what I'm saying is if you're looking for something specific, like I was, I'm able to get that and get out, and that's what we're looking at this point. So there are arguments for both, but I'm showing you what my thought process is before 8 a.m. because now we're moving through, and now we're at coming towards the New York Open. Do this. Here's your New York Open, so NYSE Open. So now you can start to see how the pattern has started. So we pushed all the way down, came back, filled that area, but now if you're taking a buy, you're probably safe because we're going to keep dropping and going further up. That's what we're looking at this point. So when we watch this play out, these are the hints. So you have a little bit of a step, a little bit of a step, a little bit of a step. So when you take those positions and you start to look at what you're doing, you start to realize, hey, okay, this is starting to make sense now. We're at 9 a.m. Where are we going to go? We should continue to go up, but we're going to go down a bit before we start to move in that direction. So now you can start to see, once again, we created that step. So this is what I'm looking for. When I'm looking at my patterns, I'm looking to say, hey, look, I'm creating steps, right? Exactly what I just said happened. We push down, push up, push down, push up. Well, we're still moving in an upwards position. This is just watching the 1 minute charts. So when you start to look and now you go into like our 1 hour, you could start to clearly see how we have that momentum. 15-minute, we have that momentum. So you can see here, if you're working off the higher time frames, this would be a price level which you could take a buy in and more than likely ride it up at that point. All right, so let me clear this, erase this, and erase that. And now you can see we're still moving, but at that point we haven't hit that price level. We're not hitting that price level anymore. We still haven't hit it. We tapped into the price level now, just visually. You can see we tapped into it. Now we moved into it. And now we're going to probably either tap further down. Okay. And now we're moving. Now we're on Wednesday. We tap further down. Tap further down. So here we are. We're at 6:15, 6:30, 6:45. But what have we seen? We've seen further movement down. Okay. So we've seen further movement down. Once again, why have we seen further movement down? Because when we go and look at our price, at our daily charts, you can see, once again, we tapped the price level. We had this rejection here. We should be moving down. So our daily is telling us more than likely the trend is going to push a bit down for the next day or so. So when I look at what we're doing here on the 5-minute, come through, 6:50, 6:55, 7 a.m., pulling back a bit. But once again, we haven't reached this level here, this level over here, this level over here. Those are things that you're keeping in mind when you're looking at the trade. Now we're at 7:30. More than likely, if I take a sell position at this point, I will do that. I will accept the sell. So now we're starting to move, but we're still ranging at this point. We haven't really done anything, and there's your move. So you're there. Your move is at 8:15. You're closed again. So you can see, once again, if we turn around and we jump into our smaller time frames, you can see where if I turn around and I say, okay, I'm going to close at this movement here. Okay, so we'll keep moving. There we go. So 8:15, we close. What has happened here? Once again, looking at your 1-minute charts, you can clearly see this was our area of issue, right? So this is what I'm saying. When I look at my charts, if we're going in this direction, more than likely we should be tapping into that region. We never really do. We come up here, we come pretty close, right? So you can easily say, well, the risk to reward was off. But once again, I'm giving you this as an example from just spotting with my eyes. I would have probably exited more than likely over here. I wouldn't have waited that long. I would have exited here. But what you're looking at is basically here. So you have 165, there you're at 180. So you're still 1-to-1, but over here as an example, you're at 72 and you're at 15. So there you have like basically a 4-to-1 or a 5-to-1 ratio when you drop. So these are small little hits that you're taking, but you're also being aware of the time, right? So this is 8:15, this is right after market open. So if you turned around and you said, well, I'm going to wait for more confirmation, if you looked at say the market open here, New York, the USA session, you could clearly see at the 1-minute charts what was formulating. We never breached this upper level here. We never breached this resistance level and we pushed further down. So when you're holding your trades, if you're looking at these shorter time frames, you can say, hey, that makes a lot of sense. We haven't really gone that way. And as I start to go further out, you can see where we're tapping into a zone. And this is why I'm saying it's so important to have these ideas of where these zones are, because it gives you the idea of like, hey, we still have bearish momentum. You can still see we have clear bearish momentum. These are just price levels being tapped. This information over here, this is price levels just being tapped to get better prices for institutions. So if you can ride those waves out, there's no reason why you can't hold this trade for the actual move. So when we see this move happen, more than likely we're probably going to push further down and further down, right? Because they had the price that they wanted. So this is what's happening. So you as a trader, you have to be aware of the overall picture of the market and the overall chart. This is a key level. This is a key level. This is a key level. Like, you just have to be able to visualize where the key levels are so that you're managing your trade accordingly. So that's why when I talk to people and I say, hey, what are we doing to manage our trades? This is what we're doing to manage our trades. Okay, so let me just continue on. And you can see we're starting to creep up a bit. But you know what? We never really get to that price level again, and now we continue to drop. So you can always see when we looked at the daily and we looked and we said, hey, we're probably going to have a bearish momentum, it was from the daily candle. The daily candle was filled. We tapped into this region over here. So it's really watching that information and saying to yourself, okay, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So we'll continue on. Now we're into Thursday, so we dropped further. So yeah, Thursday. Let me go back into the hour a little bit easier. 12, 13. So here we go. So Thursday, 6 a.m. I wake up again. Let's see what's happening. 6:15, 6:30, 6:45, 7 a.m. So once again, go back into our daily. There's nothing to tell me that the market has switched direction. So I'm looking now to take sell still. I'll drop into my 5-minute range. I'll look to see where we're at. More than likely, I like sells at this point because of the way the market's structured. So I'll take a sell, drop that out, see what happens. There, I'm done again. Okay, so I close all, I'm done. So, it's a 20-minute trade, basically. I'm done at that point. It's because I see the market structure. Could I hold it longer? Of course, because more than likely we're going to drop to this level here. If you look left, that's the reason why we're going to drop to that level. All you have to do is look over here. Do I want to hold to that level? No, because I'm not 100% certain that it's going to do that. So did I get what I wanted? Yes, because once again, when you look and you look closely at what I've done, so we'll zoom in a bit and I'll show you. Look at my risk to reward. Once again, I'm just taking, like you have a little bit, 70 pips, 78 pips, and we're dropping down. So we got like a 2-to-1 risk to reward again. So there's no reason why I need to stay in the market longer than I have to, as long as I'm understanding what's happening in the market. working off my daily, seeing what's happening. We have bearish momentum, looking at the overall frames. Everything looks good for a sell. Dropping in my 1 minute even, you can see that we had a little bit of a pullback, which is fine. I'm not worried about that pullback because I'm still before the USA open, so more than likely momentum is going to be continuing my way at that point. And then as we start to drop into the 5 minute, I'll zoom back out so you guys can see, we should continue further down. So there you go. So we did. We tapped into that zone. Once again, looking left, how do we know? Because there's your zone. There's where we tapped. So yes, you could have held it. But what I'm saying is you're managing your trades. You're trading according to your risk to reward. Okay? So that would be it. Those are my 2 weeks of trades. Once again, not the greatest in terms of, just what I did. But I think, if you look, I think I ended up the week overall down. But you can see, just consistent, getting what I needed to get. Obviously I lost a couple of big trades there, but it's just understanding what we're doing, and also making sure there's a couple of things where there's news items I probably wouldn't have traded there. I'd have been a little bit more cautious. But just from a holistic view, if you looked at the trades and you said, okay, what did we do? Okay, so we had a -8 realized profits. Drawdown was minimal. Absolute drawdown was little. Average spread. Let's see. Yeah, gross profit. So profitable trades was 8. Lost trades were 6. So I still had profitable trades, and then basically longest winning streak was 3. Stuff to that effect. But I mean, it's just once again looking through that information and saying, hey, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense at that point. Okay, so hopefully that gave you some insight. Does anybody have questions now? I'll open it up to just any type of questions for the next 10 minutes or so you guys can sort of go through that and we can talk about it. Questions. Anybody have questions? No? Okay. No other questions. Have a good day. I'll post this in the groups. Everyone will have access to this. I hope that gave some insight into sort of my thought process and what I was looking for and identifying various areas. And, you had some fun. We lost some trades, won some trades, had a good time. Okay, so have a good day, guys, and we shall chat.